Welcome to day 205 on the trail. We have three readings for today from Mark chapter 9 verses 2 through 29, 2 Samuel 20 verses 1 through 26, and 3 Maccabees chapter 7 verses 17 through 23. In the Gospel of Mark, we pick up with a statement made by Jesus from our reading on day 204. From Mark chapter 9 verse 1, "And he said to them, 'Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see that the kingdom of God has come with power.'" This statement is followed by the account of the transfiguration of Jesus, which suggests that the two may be related. Continuing in verse 2, 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. There have been numerous questions asked about the transfiguration of Jesus. Why does this happen? What was its purpose? Why were Moses and Elijah there? We can begin to answer these questions by looking at the context of where this event occurs. Jesus takes 3 of his closest disciples up on a high mountain. Now, as we have seen throughout our reading of the Bible to this point, mountains or high places carry important theological weight. In this case, we can see a connection with Mount Sinai, which is also known as Mount Horeb. On Mount Sinai, Moses met with God and received the 10 Commandments during the Exodus experience. Also, we find additional parallels between Jesus' transfiguration and the story of Moses at Mount Sinai, as found in Exodus 24 and 34. In Exodus 24:16, for example, we find a reference to the passage of 6 days, as well as the presence of a cloud out of which God speaks. Reading from Exodus 24, verse 16. "The glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day, he called to Moses out of the cloud." We also find in Exodus that Moses takes 3 companions with him up Mount Sinai: Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu. And finally, the appearance of Moses is transformed. Exodus 34, verse 30. "When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face was shining, and they were afraid to come near him." Likewise, Elijah travels to Mount Horeb, or Sinai, after his encounter with the prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel. And there, Elijah is encouraged and strengthened by God. In addition to their connection with Mount Sinai, Moses and Elijah represent 2 main sections of the Hebrew Bible: the Law and the Prophets, or the Torah and the Nevi'im. Throughout Matthew's Gospel, we see these 2 as symbolic of the entirety of God's instruction to his people. In Matthew 5, Jesus says this, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill." And then in Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, Jesus says, "In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets." And finally, in Matthew 22, beginning in verse 37, "And he said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." In this powerful setting, while standing with Moses and Elijah, God speaks to his son. Mark chapter 9, verse 7. "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." This is very similar to what we found in Mark chapter 1, verse 11. There, during Jesus' baptism, the heavens were opened, and a dove descended upon Jesus, and God said this, "You are my son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." In Mark's Gospel, it appears that the Transfiguration is strategically positioned as a turning point between Jesus' public ministry in Galilee and his passion in Jerusalem. Up to this point, Jesus has demonstrated his authority over both natural and supernatural forces, and over his opponents. But now, Jesus is turning toward Jerusalem and the events which will lead to his death, burial, and resurrection. So perhaps Mark places this story here as a reminder that Jesus' passion does not represent failure or defeat. Jesus is God's beloved Son and the example that we are to follow. Now, why does Peter offer to build 3 tabernacles or tents in verse 5? There, Peter said, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. According to Mark and Luke, Peter's request seems out of place, or maybe inappropriate, since they add, "He did not know what to say." Perhaps Peter was hoping to hold on to this powerful moment. Or maybe he believed that seeing Jesus in his glory, that the kingdom of heaven had arrived. Or maybe there is a connection here with the tabernacle in the wilderness during the Exodus experience, where God dwelt with his people. Perhaps the hope is that through Jesus, God will dwell with his people once again. Whatever Peter's reason, God responds before Jesus can answer. Verse 7. "Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, 'This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him.' Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus." As I mentioned earlier, this statement from God on the Mount of Transfiguration parallels and recalls what God said to Jesus at his baptism in Mark chapter 1. Now, since we did not have an opportunity to look at this statement when we explored Mark chapter 1 and Luke chapter 3, I thought we could discuss it here. Reading from Mark chapter 1, verse 11. "And a voice came from heaven, 'You are my son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased.'" Now, the first half of this statement is taken from Psalm chapter 2, verse 7, which reads, "I will tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, 'You are my son. Today I have begotten you.'" This psalm was used at the occasion of the coronation of the king of Israel. In this way, God is proclaiming that Jesus is the King, the Messiah, the Anointed One. Jesus was the King that the people had been hoping and waiting for. However, Jesus is not the King that they were expecting. The second half of the statement from God is found in Isaiah chapter 42, beginning in verse 1. Here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry, or lift up his voice, or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a dimly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow faint or be crushed until he has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his teaching. God is saying, here is my son, the servant. Jesus, the King, came here as a servant. He came not to lord his authority over us, but to give his life for us as a servant. And so together, James, John, and Peter will leave this mountaintop experience with Jesus. And the next time that Jesus is mentioned together with these three disciples will be at Gethsemane in the Kidron Valley. Jesus will travel from the height of the mountain of transfiguration to the valley of suffering, betrayal, and arrest for us. Then Jesus will climb a final mountain, Golgotha, to reveal the depth of God's love. At the transfiguration, Jesus was surrounded by Moses and Elijah. At the crucifixion, he will be surrounded by two criminals. At the transfiguration, God calls Jesus his beloved Son, proclaiming Jesus to be the true King. At the crucifixion, the chief priest and scribes will mock him, saying, he saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe. At the transfiguration, Jesus is joined by three witnesses, Peter, James, and John. At the crucifixion, three women, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the Young, and Salome, watch from a distance. The transfiguration is completed in the crucifixion. Jesus' death is not that of a victim, but a victor. The one who is despised and rejected by the world is raised, beloved, and well-pleasing to God. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.